Steve Wiebe, star of The King of Kong. Thank you for joining us.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Great to be on here. Thanks everyone in San Antonio for coming to the screening. Hope you enjoyed the movie.
First question, have you played Donkey Kong today?
I have not played a game of Donkey Kong today. I haven't really every day. Before, when I was going for the record, I would be waking up, crack of dawn, going to the garage and playing the game for whatever 6, 8 hours. But since the filming and since the record's been changing hands of late, I haven't been religiously going out there and playing it. There's events that come up. The Kong Off comes out every year, and it's been in Denver a couple years, and I think they're going to have it back east in New Jersey coming up this year sometime. But once I hear the event and the date that the event is, and I start prepping, but not every day.
Is it something where you have to play it over and over again in order to get back into the rhythm, or is it something where you can kind of step right back into it if you've been doing it for so many years?
I can just step right back into it. I'm not going to be at world record caliber, but if a couple weeks, I mean, even if within a day, I'll be decent to hit a kill screen. But to get to a world record, it's going to take a couple weeks to get in a groove. And then once I'm in it that deep, it becomes like a prison cell where I can't escape it. So I'm kind of leery of jumping back into that mode.
So where do you stand right now in the rankings? Do you have any idea?
I think I last looked, I'm 10th, because there's been these Kong Offs, which has brought a lot of enthusiasm and interest, and the King of Kong movie has had a lot of people interested in the record. So it's one of the most popular records out there, and there's people that are hitting kill screens now that when the filming of the King of Kong took place, there was only a handful of people. Now there's dozens of people that can get to the kill screen, and people are killing it, I guess, so to speak.
Did that ever make you a little weary that doing this film would bring so many more people out of the woodwork to try and take on the record?
I didn't ever think about it. I never even thought a film would be made in the first place. But since when it was being made, I wasn't worried about any inside intelligence being sent out there. It's great that people are taking what was done in the movie or what they've seen, and online there's people that share ideas. So it's a community that people are willing to share. There's no real secrets out there that I know of. There's little tweaks. If you watch different people play, they'll have a little different style. But for the most part, those players are in the same realm of a score. So it just takes dedication and just willingness to gut it out for whatever number of weeks or months it takes to hit that score.
You know, you seem to have, and the movie at least, have gone through a period of time where it was sort of almost like an exclusionary community. They didn't know you, so, you see in the movie that they don't accept the tape, for example. Do you feel like the film and your experiences have made it more of a widespread community?
Yeah, I think so. There's still a few people that, when they hear my name, cringe and think I'm a cheater and want to run me down or whatever. But I think I've been accepted, and since a lot of other people have been showing that these scores are over 1 million are perfectly valid and legitimate, it's not as much people doubting what I've done. I've gone in person and played. So when I go to the events, I don't feel any hate or anything. And everyone's kind, and we all shake hands and have a great time at these Kong Offs. So I'm looking forward to the next one.
Now, in the film, the kind of rivalry between you and Billy Mitchell takes center stage. Is that really how it went down, or is there? I mean, obviously documentaries do kind of selectively edit, I guess, because there is so much footage. Is that how the rivalry went down in the real world, or was this played up for the film?
There's a little bit of, they have to edit the footage down to an hour and a half. I think at one point it was like 2.5 hours long, and they ran it through a screen testing with some friends, and it was just too much information that people couldn't make sense of. So there's some stuff that got weeded out. And, we didn't really, when me and Billy were going for it, where there was no communication much, I'm doing my thing in Seattle, he's doing his thing over there in Florida. And the only time that I really got a chance to meet him was in the Guinness records when we went to Fort Hollywood or Fort Lauderdale, I think it was, down there in Florida for the Guinness tournament. I was hoping he would go to Fun Spot, and that was true. He didn't make it out there, and there was some tension that I felt on my end, but there was no real, where we didn't really come to blows face to face because there wasn't really the opportunity. Wasn't never angry at him or anything. I don't think he was mad at me. I don't think it would ever come to anything physical, of course, but there was no shouting matches, none of that. It just became something where he was avoiding me because of my so-called allegiance to Roy Schilt, who, Mr. Awesome in the King of Kong, and I wasn't really on anyone's side. I was just trying to prove myself, and just things got just misinterpreted with all that. But I think now, when I see Billy now, there's never anything bad. We just say hello, shake hands. We don't exchange Christmas cards or anything like that, but we're pleasant to each other. But there's no long dialogue about how's the family and everything. We just kind of say hello and then do our thing.
Now, is there anything that was left out of the film that you wish had been left in?
Trying to think. There was a couple things that happened that weren't documented because it was only stuff that I had on my end. But so, for instance, I had actually submitted 1 million point score, over 1 million, and there was going to be supposedly it was going to be verified, and then there was this a report that Billy had then submitted his tape shortly thereafter, and then there was going to be a simultaneous announcement that we both got these million scores, and I wanted to, and then when I tried to say that, hey, I got mine in first, there's where there was silence on the Twin Galaxies end, and then the next thing I knew is where the two referees came over to my house to inspect the machine. So there was some of that I could have been explained, what was the impetus behind them coming over. But other than that, I don't think there's anything that got omitted that would have helped the story out. There was things that were in the original one there was this double Donkey Kong board, which they tried to explain in the original, which it plays both Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. But when they put that in, the average person who doesn't know anything about video games couldn't understand it. Went right over their head and just muddied the water. So it just made it easier not to discuss that whole double Donkey Kong board. And that was the reason they thought I was trying to cheat. But that's a whole nother movie. They could go into that.
So yeah, your Donkey Kong machine is on the side. It reads Donkey Kong Jr. So that's what you're talking about, right? That it had both games in it.
I had bought a Donkey Kong Jr. game originally, and then I got going for the record on that one. And at some point, I wanted to go back and get the Donkey Kong record, and I was calling up the guy who designed the double Donkey Kong board. I said, "Hey, I'm going to be going for world records on this. Is there anything that's different than the original play?" He goes, "No, everything happens outside of the arena of the game. When you switch between the games, it's not interrupting anything that would affect the gameplay." And so I go, "Okay, cool." So the only thing that's different is the sounds that are obvious, and I don't see anything in the gameplay that's different. But there's the sound of Mario is the sound of Junior climbing up the vines. It's kind of a squeaky pitch versus the regular walk of Mario. So it was, if I was trying to cheat, I would have hidden the volume or something. I'm not trying to hide anything. So they recognized that it was a double Donkey Kong at that point when the sound was seen to be the Junior sounds. And then I went back and just got a regular one. Just said, okay, I'll just go back and play on the regular one. So that's what I did, and eventually I got the score recognized.
Do you feel, I know that there's a lot of people from Billy Mitchell's end who would say that the film has been edited, like Jared had said earlier. Do you feel like it was an accurate representation of how things went down from your perspective?
From my perspective, I guess, with me going out there to Fun Spot and the feelings that I had when they kind of didn't they gave me the score at that point, but then when the TV came rolling through and all that, and that kind of was disheartening. And then, we went out to the Guinness tournament, and that was documented correctly. He came in, and Billy didn't compete. He had other, obligations. He just wasn't ready to play at that time. And that's from what I saw. That's what's happening. That's what I felt during those times of frustration of not being able to perform well at the Guinness tournament and not getting a chance to compete with Billy for whatever reasons. So there's different things that they had to take out and make it a storyline that was entertaining. So the filmmakers did what they saw, and I don't see anything that was straying from the truth that would change the whole feel of the what happened in my eyes.
Now, do you feel like, you mentioned like the TV rolling out, do you feel like that would have happened regardless if there were cameras filming, or do you think that any part of them were, playing for the cameras and some of that?
I don't know. It's a good question. I imagine they probably would have done that. If Billy wasn't going to be there, they would probably want to show that he had the score that he had submitted. So it's probably likely that he would have done that anyways.
So was there any kind of sense beforehand, before you went to Fun Spot, of the kind of community you were going to encounter among the people that had been the founding members of Twin Galaxies?
I knew there was a couple referees that were wanting me to prove myself live. Robert Merzak, I don't think, was a fan of me at that point, because I had submitted the Donkey Kong record on the double Donkey Kong board, and he had verified it originally, and then it got through to some other people, and they recognized the double Donkey Kong, and he thought I was pulling a fast one on him. So I think he's never liked me, and still probably doesn't like me for that reason. But Walter, I had good communications with Walter. I wasn't worried with him or any other gamers. I didn't have any negative experiences with. So I came in there, was just going there just to prove my gameplay, and that I wasn't worried about anything happening negatively.
One of the more surprising things I think in the movie is the segment where they talk about how there were people who showed up at your house unannounced and went to inspect the board. Did any part during that, did you feel like stepping away, like it was getting too into your actual life and not this fun hobby?
There was a point where I thought, once the board, they found the box with Roy Schultz's name on it, and even though it was a legitimate board, it was purchased directly from a vendor, just happened to have Roy's return address on it, just in case it didn't get to my place, it would get shipped back to Roy because he had bought it. But there was a point after that happened that I was thinking it was never going to get verified. My 1,000,000 point score, I have to go back and do it all again. Is it worth it? And all that. And then at that point, there weren't any documentarians on board. So once they came on board, I thought, okay, this might be an opportunity to kind of show kind of the things on my end of it, and maybe that would help bring to light some of the truth or whatever. But that kind of gave me a little more energy once the documentary started.
Now, how did that come about?
Good question. I had a friend of mine that's in Hollywood. He's a screenwriter. I grew up with him. He's in the King of Kong. His name's Mike Thompson, and he knew Ed Cunningham through a mutual friend of ours that also went to our high school. And Ed played football at the University of Washington. That's where I went in the same era in the late 80s, early 90s. And Ed was working on a documentary called New York Dolls, and he'd just been finishing that up. He was just about ready to finish that up with another friend of his, Seth Gordon. He had met, I guess they just found each other from films. They were interested in films and got together. I don't know exactly how they hooked up, but they were working on that film, and they were looking for different ideas. So Mike pitched this idea to Ed and said, hey, there's this friend of mine that's playing Donkey Kong, going for a record, and there's some weird things happening with people coming out to inspect his board. And they heard about this and thought it was a crazy that in video games there was all this cutthroat stuff happening. So once they got finished with that documentary, or were in the end of filming or finishing it up, they started following my story. So they jumped in after they came out to my house, and right before I was going to go to Fun Spot. So that's where they picked up.
And so what do you feel makes this film so special? People really latch onto it. They have a lot of fun watching it. What do you think draws them to this story so much?
Yeah, I think they just see a person like myself that's trying to get a goal, and there's obstacles, and everyone can relate to something where they're trying to achieve, and there's obstacle after obstacle. So that's probably the underlying theme that people can relate to. And some of the funny things that happen with the other gamers that are going for their own records kind of are funny things that happen when he's going out to the parking lot and slams the hood when he doesn't get his Frogger score. Yeah. Things like that. And so I think people, and the old people at my age, mid 40s, that relate to the video games back then, it's kind of nostalgic for them to revisit these games. And it's kind of weird that people are even caring about these games anymore. So that's kind of drawing the gaming crowd, but the other people can relate to the story, maybe the family, my family being involved.
Piggybacking on that, you don't seem to be kind of living the entire classic gaming lifestyle like some of these other people do in the film. Do you think that had a lot to do with their initial sort of skepticism of you?
Probably, yeah. Since I wasn't in the arcades, they didn't know who I was. They probably thought, hey, who's this guy getting these scores just out of nowhere? Because it usually doesn't happen. There's usually somebody they know about. But I had been working on Donkey Kong, back, I wasn't as good as Billy in the 80s, but back in the early 90s, I'd hit the kill screen a couple times and didn't even know it existed, and ended up selling the machine thinking it was something wrong with my machine. At the certain level, I can't get past it, so it wasn't even worth playing it anymore. So then I went on and looked at a website that Twin Galaxies back, it was probably like around the late 90s, right before the internet wasn't around back when it might have been in its early stages, but there was no websites about the Donkey Kong scores. But when I found out that my scores were bigger than Billy's score that had been scored in 81 or 82, whatever, I have to get myself another machine. So, and I had still no contact I was all doing this outside of any knowledge of any other gamers. And so when I came out of the blue, I remember when I submitted a Donkey Kong Jr. score to Robert Merzek or Walter Day, one of them said, are you sure you didn't use the cheat? I go, no, I played the game because they were wondering how could I just come out of the blue like that for this world record on Donkey Kong Jr. I go, no, I played it legit. So that's probably one of the reasons and also the Roy Schilt, tainted with Roy Schilt, since he had been kind of a thorn in their side for so many years.
So when you get into competitive gaming like this, and you kind of see you drawing on the boards and trying to figure out the strategy to it. Do you still have fun when you're making these record runs, or are they stress? Are they concentration? What are they for you?
It's all of the above. It's fun, stressful. You got to concentrate for several hours. Back when it wasn't this much hardcore, like point pressing, revealing some of these point pressing tips was exciting. You'd come up with a way of getting more points, and that's what kept it interesting and fresh and new. Now it's most everything. I don't know if there's anything that can be discovered that's going to revolutionize the gameplay, but now it's just a matter of just being persistent. But back then it was fun to reveal some of these tricks that would help get to a point where you can get over 1 million points. So that was exciting back then. It's still fun to play the game and go for a world record.
So your family was heavily involved in the film. How long ago was the film shot?
Yeah, it started, the filming was in 2005 to like 2007, but I had been going for the record since 2002. So it was couple years before they came on board.
So your kids were young now, and I guess they're teenagers now.
Yeah, my daughter graduates from high school this year, and my son's in 9th grade.
How do they look back on their role in the film? Your daughter had a really poignant statement about the Guinness World Record, and your son famously asked to have his bottom wiped.
Yeah, those are 2 scenes. My son was kind of devastated for a little while with the scene he was in, which makes sense, but he'll get over it. My daughter, yeah, they don't really go back and watch the film. I don't think they've ever gone back and watched it on their own or anything, but maybe someday they'll look back on it and go, wow, this was kind of weird that this happened to us or whatever. But yeah, they don't really mention to it. I show the film to my class in my high school, and they enjoy it. And my son's now at the high school, and so now I'm kind of a little afraid to show it, because now his friends who see it will maybe start giving him a little bit of business about the scenes, that you refer to.
So do you play any other video games? Are you a gamer other than the classic gaming like Donkey Kong?
Not too much. The Donkey Kong Jr. and Donkey Kong were the 2 that I had played mostly in the 80s, so I kind of latched onto those. And now I don't really, the home console games, we have Xbox and the Wii, but I played a little bit of Mario Karts was about the only thing that I really got into. Not really, wasn't hyper focused on it, but would enjoy playing that with my friend, with my son. Some of the Mario Golf or something like that, but none of those first person shooter games, Halo or whatever, Gears of War. I think there's one like that I tried. Someone gave me that as a gift along with an Xbox, and I put it in, and I was trying to find out where to go, and I was stuck in the same room for 20 minutes. So I said, I'm done with this game.
So one thing we've kind of noticed is that you've been popping up in the background of a lot of Seth Gordon's projects, both movies and TV. Are you now his new good luck charm for any project he does?
I think he's kind of taken me as his good luck charm, like you said. He's probably afraid if he doesn't put me in one of his films or TV shows, his career's gonna drop. That's fail. But it's been very generous of Seth to do that. He's just kind of taken me along for the ride. I guess he's figured I was part of it when he started his ride. Just bring Steve along, and it's kind of fun. You get to visit all his movies and meet all the actors. The most recent one's called Pixels, which will be out in, I think, this spring, late spring, early summer, which will be fun. If you haven't heard about that, it's the invasion of all these pixelated video game characters, and there's Adam Sandler is one of the classic gamers that's asked by the president to come back and figure out how to destroy these guys, because if he knows how to play the video game, he can then figure out how to kill all these Galaga invaders or Donkey Kong. So it's kind of cool that they were able to capture all those video games in this thing. It should be fun to watch.
I'd heard a while back when the documentary was released that there was talks of a fictionalized version of this story. Is there any movement on that? Is that a dead project, or do you know anything about it at all?
They tried a few scripts they had tried and nothing clicked. There was a couple things that, couple scripts that were looking promising. Then they would have it rewritten a little bit and give it to another writer. So a few writers were involved. So it's been a while since it was bought or purchased in 2007, and there's always people saying sometimes these Hollywood movies take 10 years to make. These things that come out today are not something that were written yesterday. A lot of things have to happen, like the producer, the writer, and the right actors have to be available. So sometimes it takes 10 years, but at this point, I think it's kind of on the back burner. They haven't really figured out a good way to retell the story in a new way that wouldn't be cheesy or whatever. They were debating on how to do it. I think the last I heard was it was going to be like a faux doc, kind of like The Office kind of way of viewing it or taping it. But at this point, I don't know where it stands. It's probably probably on the deep back burner unless something crazy happens that might ignite the interest again.
I don't know if you can answer this, but I had heard that that Peter Dinklage's character in Pixels was loosely based on Billy Mitchell. Is there any truth to that?
Well, I had met Peter over at the set, yeah, and he had his mullet and had the hair decked out. People say Billy's not a mullet because he has long hair everywhere, I guess, but he had the Billy Mitchell hairstyle going, so I imagine it probably might be loosely based off his character, yeah.
Now, Billy Mitchell, famously in the movie, was a hot sauce and chicken wing sauce purveyor. Have you ever had any of Billy Mitchell's hot sauce or wing sauce?
Yeah, he's given a lot of bottles away at events. He'll produce special labels for them, and I'll get a few of his bottles, and I've had it. It's pretty good. I'm not a big hot sauce guy. Usually I put salsa on things, so I'm like a salsa guy. So if he was a salsa guru, then maybe I would be eating more of his product, but I'm not a big hot sauce guy. But I hear it's good. He won't sell it to the West Coast. That I heard there was people trying to order it that had a California area code, and he didn't want to sell it. This was back in the 2007 era when the film was just coming out, so he wasn't trusting that these people had good intentions.
So should we be looking forward to a Steve Wiebe salsa in the future?
Perhaps, yeah. I'll be on the market. I'll have something out in a few years, probably.
All right, that's going to do it for our questions. Thanks a lot, Steve. We really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And we had a lot of fun here at this screening, so thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you for having me. Bye.